Here's one for you. Can you recommend a tent similar to the Hilleberg Unna, but half the cost and half the weight? So that's a question that's been sent to me by Sue Gillett. I haven't got a magic wand, Sue, but I will have a go at answering the question for you. I've come up with 3 alternatives that I'd be looking at if I was spending my money on a similar tent. And I'll let you know a little bit later in the video which one of the 3 I would prefer. But first we need to set the standard of what we're comparing to. So I've had the Hilleberg Unna for, well, I don't know how long I've had it now, quite a while. And it was a replacement for my Hilleberg Solo. It's a 4-season tent. I've been really, really happy with it. It is incredibly robust, but it's not cheap. It costs around £820 and its packed weight is 2.3 kilos. So we're trying to half that price and half that weight. As I said, I've not got a magic wand, Sue, so I will see what I can do. So not everybody requires the Hilleberg Unna. It is quite a specialist tent, but it is also, it's capable of handling some really extreme conditions. I don't know if you've seen the recent Hilleberg video where they are pitching up the Hilleberg Unna and they're wind testing it up to 67 miles an hour with different pole configurations, and the Unna is standing up to those conditions really, really well. It's also really easy to set up. You simply push 2 poles through 2 sleeves and peg it out. But it is also fully freestanding, so if there's no wind whatsoever, you could just leave the tent and it will stand up on its own accord. Also, that's great for if you need to move the position a little bit once you've set things up. It's a really spacious 1-man 4-season tent with a solid inner, so that keeps out pretty much all of the elements. The fly sheet goes right down to the ground. There's good ventilation options. The door virtually sit the front of the tent. You can unzip that fully if you want to, if the weather's nice and you want those panoramic views. And obviously it'll take a beating when it comes to wind, rain, snow, all of those kind of things. That is what Hilleberg is all about. So for a tent with those sort of capabilities, a little over 2 kilos is not really heavy. But if you want to be trimming down to maybe a 1 kilo or 1.5 kilos, whatever it is, there's got to be some kind of compromise with that. You're not going to get the same sort of strength and durability as you are from heavy duty materials. So I'll crack on with my first of 3 alternative suggestions. I have brought a few little notes with me because I want to make sure that I get the specs right. But the first one is obviously the flavour of the month, which is the Durston X-Dome 1-person tent. So that is also a fully freestanding tent. It weighs in at 985 grams, so that is under half the weight. It's got a carbon poles, which is exoskeletal, so the pole structure is on the outside, and the price of that is around £500 shipped here to the UK, and that includes all of the fees and things like that. It looks a really good tent, to be honest. However, at the moment you can only buy this in a 3-season option. The tent comes with it's a double skin tent, exactly the same, but it's got a fully mesh inner. There's a little bit of solid along the bottom and obviously the bathtub floor. And also the fly sheet is raised a little bit. It doesn't go right down to the ground. So in these kind of cold conditions, or if there's snow, I'm not so sure that it's going to be suitable for 4-season use around the UK. Although, I've seen some of Andy Beavers's videos lately and some of the photos that he's done in snowy conditions where the tent seems to be holding up to its own. However, you can see if you look closely that he is getting some spin drift and he is getting snow coming inside the tent. And some of that could quite easily get onto your sleeping bag and other bits of gear and things like that. I'm also a little bit wary of the storm-worthiness. So Durston are marketing this as a very storm-worthy tent, and they're saying it is 3 times stronger or more robust than other ultralight tents, which, when you see the demonstration, it takes a lot more weight on the top than, say, something like a Big Agnes or maybe an MSR tent. So I do believe that it is stronger, but that's in comparison to an ultralight tent. So it's still not going to be able to compete with the big boys like a Hilleberg Solo or even an Unna. So yeah, I feel that some people could get caught up in the hype of this being a storm-worthy tent, taking it up Scafell Pike in 2 or 3 seconds, and then, you know, being able to stand up on it. So I do believe that it is stronger, but that's in comparison to an ultralight tent. So it's still not going to be able to compete with the big boys like a Hilleberg Solo or even an Unna. So yeah, I feel that some people could get caught up in the hype of this being a storm-worthy tent, taking it up 50-mile-an-hour winds and then getting the tent destroyed. So I wouldn't like anyone to go down that route. I don't know if you saw Stephen's video, My Life Outdoors. He got to test the prototype Durston X-Dome, and he snapped the pole, which it had me concerned because it's got a hub system on it, and the only time that I've ever had problems with tent pole snapping, other than cheap fiberglass poles, is with a hub system. I've had it once go on a Terra Nova and once go on an MSR tent. So these are carbon fibre poles with a hub system, and I don't like the hub system. That's personal preference. And if you do get a break actually on the hub area itself, it's extremely difficult to do a repair out in the field. Whereas if you've just got a straight pole and it snaps, you can usually use the tent pole sleeve, and get a makeshift repair to get you through the night. I do have to say that Stephen said that it was user error, and if he'd have done things a little bit differently, he doesn't think that the pole would have snapped, but it still started raising a few concerns for me. But for a lot of situations, unless you're going out in some really extreme conditions, then the Durston X-Dome is one to consider at around the £500 price mark. P.S. One other thing, I don't think the X-Dome's got enough tie-out points. A few more extra guying out points would make the structure a little bit more stronger, in my opinion. Before I move on to tent number 2, none of these tents are tents that I've actually used myself, but I have seen them tested by 3 people that I trust when it comes to their opinion. So there's Andy Beavers, there's Andrew Park, and there is Tom Heaney. So I'll go through the extra tents. I will put links in the description to their videos as well, showing you these tents being put through the paces. And yeah, I think if you are looking at buying any sort of tent, just get lots of opinions, lots of reviews, and especially people that you personally trust. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Andrew Park's Pretense Border tent. He's the only person that I've seen use one of these. It is a 4-season tent, and you can get the optional add-on vestibule for it to give you extra space for maybe getting changed or storing some extra gear. It is a very similar design to the Unna, with 2 poles that just cross over into a dome sort of shape. It's $578, which is around £460, I think, something like that. But then you might have to pay some kind of import fees and all of that kind of stuff. So it isn't cheap, but it's still cheaper than the Unna. And it weighs in at 1.4 kilos. So this does look more of a 4-season tent than the X-Dome. The fly does go down a lot more. I think once you've got that front vestibule on, you can proper hunker down for long periods of time. Again, it's got plenty of space inside. And it looks a really nice tent. If you go check out Andrew's video, he does hope that this is the tent that's going to be his 4-season tent for this winter. Obviously, only time will tell, and I'll just keep an eye out on his videos just to see how the tent performs over the coming months. But so far, everything looks really promising, and it's cheaper than the Unna. Right, moving on to tent number 3, and this is the actual tent that I would spend my own money on if I had to buy something, an alternative to the Unna. It is the Tarp Tent Arc Dome 2-person tent. So it's a very similar design to the Unna. Again, it's got 2 poles that cross over, giving you the dome shape. It's a 2-person tent, so there's plenty of room inside, 2 entrances, 2 nice little porch areas or vestibules, whatever you want to call them. And it looks pretty sturdy as well. And I've been watching, I always watch Tom Heaney's adventure videos, and I know he's had this tent out in some really rough conditions, and it's made from the Ultra TNT material for the fly sheet. So this is like the material that they use for competitive yachting for the sails and things like that. Is really tough stuff. It can take, the way that it performs, it can take lots of stresses from different directions and angles, so it makes it really good for a tent fabric. Apart from the stitching part of it, you can't stitch it very well. Once you've got the stitches in, it can create a tear point, so they have to manufacture it a little bit differently with bonding instead, which gives it its strength. So the Arc Dome comes in at $600, and that comes with a solid inner. So that's around 470 quid. And yeah, it's a 4-season tent. It's a lovely bit of kit. The only thing is with the Ultra material, I think it's white, and it might be a little bit noisier than Sil Nylon, but it doesn't stretch the same. It doesn't sag. It's easier to, to stay dry. So the Unna, if I was out in these conditions, then in the morning my tent would be absolutely soaking wet on the fly sheet, and you can't. It's not just a case of wiping it off. So once you pack your tent away, you've got to get it out again and dry things out. Or next day you might get a little bit of moisture on your inner tent. So Sil Nylon's very difficult to keep dry. The Arc Dome's also fully freestanding, so you don't need to guy the tent out if there's no wind whatsoever, although I always do recommend guying out your tent. But it means you can move the tent around and get the optimum position, flattest bit of ground, all of that kind of stuff. And when you do come to guy it out, there is loads of tie out options and loads of guying out points on this tent. There's a lot of thought gone into the design of it. Tarp Tent makes some very clever tents, and the Arc Dome is no exception. The only thing that I would like to see is the doors, the internal doors. For the size of the opening that you can get, the internal door is quite small to get through. I much prefer the Unna, where you can almost unzip it fully and have the whole thing open. If they just tweaked it and did that, then it'd be a perfect tent, I think. A little bit like the X-Dome, the inner is offset a little bit, which that creates the vestibule area. Really clever use of the space, really. So that's my alternatives to the Hilleberg Unna. When it comes to weight saving, I don't think that is important at all. 2 kilos is a very reasonable amount to carry. But yeah, £820, that is a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people, including me. That's why I won't be buying another Hilleberg anytime soon. At the end of the day, if you are up a mountain and things turn sour and the weather really comes in, if you ask me what tent I would like to be in, it would be a Hilleberg. They are proven to perform in some of the worst conditions on the planet. That is what you're paying for, that peace of mind that your tent is going to get you through the night. So, it's up to you whether you find that is worth paying the premium for. The better option would be to just go out when the weather's nice. But yeah, that's it for this one. I'm going to go home and start doing some sums, see if I can afford a Tarp Tent Arc Dome. Don't tell Joe. Thanks a lot for the question, and if anyone's got any more, then please head over to the community page, where I have got a pinned post where you can ask as many questions as you want, and that's the best place for me to read them. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.